Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Leroy Housel, and I built my empire out of fire, sweat, and cast iron. 20 years ago, I was just a broke dishwasher in a rundown kitchen on the east side of Austin. Now, I'm the founder and executive chef of the Ember Table, a chain of 5 upscale restaurants across Texas, praised in Bon Appetit and name-dropped by celebrities who can't even pronounce demi-glace. I didn't inherit success. I cooked for it, one burnt hand and one 18-hour shift at a time. And I had 2 constants through it all, my wife Celeste and my best friend Gavin Reed. Or at least that's what I believed. Celeste and I met during a food truck festival when I was just starting out with a rented grill and no permit. She was bold, sharp, and stunning, one of those women who made you feel like the world was standing still when she looked at you. She believed in me when I had nothing but ambition and unpaid bills. Gavin? He was there even before her. We were roommates at culinary school in Houston. He introduced me to my first real investor, helped me negotiate my first lease, and later became my business partner, owning 15% of the Ember Table when we opened our 3rd location. They were the people I trusted most. My wife and my brother in everything but blood. So you tell me, how does a man survive it when both decide to bury a knife in his back? It started subtly. It always does. Celeste had been cold lately. Not angry, not distant in the usual marriage in year 17 kind of way, but secretive. Her phone, once an afterthought, became a lifeline she clutched at all times. She started going to charity planning meetings at odd hours and getting dressed like she was meeting with Vogue, not the board of some soup kitchen. At first I chalked it up to boredom. Our son Mateo had just started college in Colorado. The house was quiet and Celeste wasn't one to sit still. But then Gavin started acting weird too. We always met every Thursday at 9 a.m. sharp for a business breakfast. Ritual. He'd bring his laptop, I'd bring the budget sheets, and we'd bicker over wine lists and staff turnover. But one week he didn't show. Texted last minute, something came up. Then it happened again the next week. And the week after. The funny part? Celeste's board meetings always coincided with Gavin's last-minute absences. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until the night I came home early. It was a Tuesday. I'd canceled a meeting at the last minute with a potential investor from Dallas. I wanted to surprise Celeste, cook her dinner like I used to back when I still wore secondhand chef coats and we thought store-brand pasta was a luxury. I walked through the front door at 6:45 p.m. The house was quiet. No TV, no music. Just hushed voices. Upstairs. I took off my shoes. Don't ask me why. Instinct maybe. The kind that tells you when something is off before you can prove it. The door to the master bedroom was open just a crack. I'll never forget that moment. Not the sight of them, not the panic in their eyes when I stepped in. Celeste in a robe. Gavin, shirtless, sitting on the edge of my bed, tying his shoelaces like this was just another morning. Like this wasn't the ultimate betrayal. Leroy, Celeste gasped, face pale. It's not. I raised my hand. Don't. Just don't. Gavin stood up, arms half raised like he thought I'd swing. I didn't. I just looked at him. My best man, my kid's godfather, the man I had once bailed out with a $40,000 personal check when his food truck dream went belly up. He tried to speak. It just happened. I laughed. That's what people say when they drop a plate. When they forget a birthday. Not when they sleep with the woman you built your life around. I turned and walked out. I didn't punch a wall. Didn't scream. I just grabbed my coat, got in my truck, and drove. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. My stomach was a pit, a black hole of rage and heartbreak and disbelief. I sat at the bar in the original Ember Table, the one I'd started with, and just stared at the kitchen, empty now, humming from the industrial fridge. And I thought, I built something everyone wanted to be part of. And the 2 people I brought closest to it, they tried to burn it down from the inside. But they forgot one thing. You don't betray a man who knows how to run fire. You don't cheat a man who built an empire from ashes. And you sure as hell don't stab a chef without expecting him to serve revenge cold. I wish I could tell you I stormed back into that bedroom and burned it all down with a righteous fury. But the truth is, I drove around Austin for 4 hours that night, not knowing where I was going or why. Just driving. Past familiar streets and glowing restaurant signs I had built from the ground up. Past memories that now tasted like ash in my mouth. My mind kept flashing back to Celeste's face, her eyes wide in panic, lips forming lies before the truth could even settle in. And Gavin. Shirtless. Casual. like he'd just come out of the shower in my home. I ended up in the staff parking lot behind the downtown Ember table, staring at the glowing kitchen light. That kitchen used to be my sanctuary, my temple, the place where food saved me when nothing else could. Now, it just felt like a hollow box where I pretended life made sense. I didn't go home that night. I slept in my office, curled up on the damn catering couch like some washed-up sous chef with nowhere to go. The next morning, my assistant Monique knocked on the door with a latte and concern on her face. "You okay, chef?" I nodded even though I felt like screaming. Just didn't want to fight traffic. She knew I was lying. But Monique also knew better than to press when I had that look in my eyes. I went through the motions that day. Met with the produce guy. Reviewed inventory. Took a call with our head of marketing about our upcoming holiday brunch campaign. But every conversation felt like I was underwater, moving my mouth but barely hearing a thing. By 5 p.m., I was sitting alone at the kitchen counter of the flagship location, watching as the line cooks prepped for dinner service. I should have been proud. This was the legacy I'd built. Every single plate had a piece of my soul in it. But all I could think was, none of it matters if the people you built it for were only waiting to tear it down. The first text came that night. "Celeste, please Leroy. We need to talk." This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I didn't respond. "Gavin, let me explain. You're my brother, man. Don't let this destroy everything." "Everything?" "You destroyed everything." The next morning, Celeste was waiting for me outside the restaurant. She looked like hell. Hair in a messy bun, sunglasses hiding the damage under her eyes. I let her speak before I said a word. "It started after Mateo left," she whispered. "I was lonely. You were always working. Gavin was there. That made me laugh, an ugly, bitter sound that turned a few heads on the sidewalk. So because I was working my ass off to keep your lifestyle intact," I snapped, "you found comfort with the man I trusted most?" "Don't twist it, Leroy," she said, eyes flashing. "You haven't touched me in over a year. You barely even looked at me unless it was for a dinner photo or a charity auction." And just like that, it all made sense. I was the brand. She was the garnish. She'd stopped seeing me as a husband the second I became a billboard for success. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." That night, I poured myself a drink in my office, the same place Gavin and I used to brainstorm menus and argue over spice pairings. I stared at the glass and wondered what was left. Not the marriage. Not the friendship. My son was gone, off at college, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth yet. I'd given everything to people who used it as leverage to stab me in the back. That was the moment it hit me, not just sadness but powerlessness. What could I do? If I went public, the scandal could damage the brand. If I fought them both at once, I'd look bitter. And if I did nothing, they'd win. I felt like I was drowning in the very empire I'd built. Every customer that walked into my restaurant, every employee that smiled and said, "Chef's in the house." None of them knew I was just barely holding myself together. I started sleeping at the restaurants full-time. Staff thought I was going through a creative phase. Celeste stopped texting after a week. I knew why. She assumed I'd fade, that I'd give in, that I'd accept it. But then something happened. I went into our shared cloud drive one night looking for a vendor invoice, and I found something else. A document labeled Phase 2 Expansion Proposal Ember Concepts. It wasn't mine. It was a business plan, complete with logo mock-ups, funding models and property listings for a new venture, Ember Soul. A boutique, upscale spin-off of my brand, with Gavin listed as executive director. And Celeste? Chief marketing officer. The pitch deck had photos of dishes I'd created, slogans I wrote, and a launch plan, scheduled for next spring. They hadn't just betrayed me physically. They were planning to steal my entire legacy. That was the moment grief died, and something colder took its place. I wasn't broken anymore. I was angry, and I was done playing the victim. The file was titled, Ember Soul, Launch Q2. They didn't even try to hide it. They were going to rip off my brand, repackage it with a sleeker logo, and pretend it was all theirs. Gavin had listed himself as founder. Celeste was in charge of brand identity and social media. They even had preliminary investor contacts. 2 of them were clients I'd personally wined and dined at the chef's table in the Ember Table's private lounge. I felt sick. But this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was theft. Corporate theft. Brand theft. Intellectual property theft. And I knew something else. They wouldn't be stupid enough to try this unless they already had access to things they shouldn't. I opened Gavin's user profile on our internal restaurant management software. My hand trembled as I scrolled. Access level, Administrator. Permissions. Full, including payroll, vendor contracts, inventory logs, financial reports. He had never been given that access. I looked deeper. In the audit logs, I found something even worse. 4 weeks ago, Gavin had downloaded a full backup of our recipes database, including the locked chef's secrets section. My proprietary recipes, many never even used on the menus, stored as future exclusives. He'd also pulled reports on customer loyalty programs, vendor pricing deals, and employee contracts. Then it clicked. He wasn't just planning a spin-off. He was trying to poach my staff. I felt the rage rise like bile. But instead of smashing something, I took a breath. I screenshotted everything. Date stamps. File names. Access logs. I created a secure drive and stored it in 2 locations. One on a USB hidden in my home office safe, and one on a separate encrypted cloud account only I could access. Then I did something I hadn't done since I first opened the business. I called Janelle Moore, my corporate attorney, the same shark in heels who'd once shut down a fraudulent franchise lawsuit in 48 hours flat. Janelle, I said, I need to meet. Privately. The next morning, we sat in her downtown office, surrounded by glass, granite, and silence. I laid out everything. The affair. The stolen expansion plans. The unauthorized access. The potential poaching. Her expression didn't change, but I saw it in her eyes. This wasn't just a betrayal story. It was a legal firestorm. She tapped a red fingernail against the folder. Do you want to bury them? Or burn them slowly? Both, I said. She smiled. Good answer. Janelle walked me through what we'd need. Timestamps, documentation, internal policies they violated, any evidence of investor contact using Ember branding. Then she asked something else. Do you still share a joint account with Celeste? I hesitated. Technically, yes. For the household expenses. She nodded. Good. Don't touch it. Let her think nothing's wrong. And then she leaned in, lowering her voice. Leroy, I need you to listen carefully. Because this next part might change everything. She pulled out a folder of her own. You know how you and Gavin formed Ember Group LLC back in 2016 when you opened your 3rd location? Yeah. You remember the clause we wrote in, Clause 9C? I blinked. No. Clause 9C is the exit protection clause. It states that if a partner is found engaging in competitive planning or misuse of confidential assets, their stake can be forcibly bought out at the last evaluated percentage, minus penalties for breach of trust. I sat back in my chair, stunned. How do I not remember that? Because you trusted him. And because I wrote it in as a safeguard just in case. Gavin's 15% stake was worth nearly $1.8 million. With Clause 9C enforced, I could buy him out for under $300,000 and keep it from ever going public. I stared out the window at the Texas skyline. This whole time, I whispered, he thought he was ahead. Thought I was blind. But he never read the fine print. Janelle leaned back, pleased. They rarely do. That night I went home. Not to talk. Not to scream. But to play the part. Celeste was in the kitchen, reheating some organic vegan thing I knew she'd never eat unless there was someone to impress. She turned when I walked in, surprised. I thought you were staying at the restaurant. I shrugged. Thought I'd try to sleep in my own bed tonight. You okay? Her eyes narrowed. You're being calm. I'm tired, Celeste. I don't have the energy for fireworks. She softened just a little. I never meant to hurt you, Leroy. I swear. No, I said quietly. You meant to replace me. She didn't deny it. I went upstairs, showered, then locked myself in my home office and started reviewing our prenup. I'd forgotten about it for years, signed before we made $1, when all I had was ambition and a food cart, and her parents were afraid I'd use their daughter for money. But they'd insisted on a clause. And I'd added one of my own in return. Infidelity void spousal claim on shared business assets. It was right there. Black and white. Celeste could keep the house, maybe the car. But the Ember table? That was mine. And Gavin? He was about to learn that burning bridges with the man who built them comes with a toll. They thought I'd crumble. They thought I'd drink myself into a stupor, sign half of my empire away in a blind divorce, and walk off into the Texas sunset a broken man. But I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. Step 1, protect the Ember table. I worked with Janelle to tighten up all administrative access across the company. Gavin's credentials? Revoked. His logins? Scrubbed. A full forensic sweep confirmed that he'd downloaded over 30 sensitive documents. Menus, contracts, even proprietary staff scheduling systems. Every single one was now locked behind multi-factor encryption. But I didn't tell him. I wanted him to think he still had access. That was part of the trap. Then we updated our employee contracts, quietly, surgically, adding a new clause. No moonlighting, no competing ventures, no poaching offers accepted from outside entities. Anyone who violated it would be immediately terminated and sued for breach. Again, I said nothing. I didn't fire a soul. Yet. I just waited. Step 2. Set the legal bait. Janelle drafted a formal partner ethics violation report, citing Gavin's actions under Clause 9C. But we didn't file it. Not yet. Instead, I created a mock investor interest email under a fake shell account, posing as a VC interested in Embersoul. I knew Gavin couldn't resist the bait. The email read, "Your concept looks promising. But we'd need a formal pitch deck and some sample recipes to move forward. Can you provide details?" 4 hours later, Gavin replied with a PDF that included Ember Table's exact ribeye rub formula, my secret, my signature, and a vendor list pulled straight from my internal database. That was the smoking gun. Step 3. Gather the allies. Gavin always assumed the kitchen staff would follow him if things went sideways. He was wrong. You see, chefs don't follow frauds. They follow leaders. And for years, I had their respect because I sweated next to them, cried with them, stood behind them when suppliers got stingy and customers got abusive. So I invited a few key people, our head chef from the flagship location, 2 general managers and Monique, into a quiet after-hours meeting. And I told them the truth. No filters. No denials. Just cold, brutal honesty. Gavin and Celeste betrayed me, I said. They're planning to launch a rival restaurant using Ember's DNA. But I won't go down without a fight. And I need to know who's really with me. There was silence. Then Monique, bless her no-nonsense heart, said, "I've seen that man fake an injury to skip a weekend rush. I'll take a bullet for you, chef." The others nodded. And with that, the core team was locked in. Step 4. The divorce file. I waited until Celeste was out of town, another one of her wellness retreats in Sedona. Then I served the papers. She found them waiting in a crisp folder on the marble kitchen island when she returned. Prenuptial clause highlighted in bright yellow. Adultery equals forfeiture of shared business assets. Within 24 hours, I got a call from her lawyer, some trust fund Harvard type named Chandler, who sounded offended I even knew how to read legalese. He tried to bargain. "We could argue the prenup is outdated," he said. "That the clause is punitive and unenforceable." "Try it," I said. "I've got timestamps, text messages, and an admissions email. You want this in court? Or do you want a clean settlement?" He went quiet. Then, "What's your offer?" "The house. The Lexus. And 6 months of spousal support." "That's it. She can keep the designer bags too. Tell her she earned them." Step 5. Strike the match. I scheduled a lunch with Gavin. Public place, private booth, full visibility. A quiet bistro he always liked, halfway between our headquarters and his overpriced condo. He walked in wearing a linen button-up and fake humility. "Leroy," he said, voice cautious. "I'm glad you reached out. I've been wanting to make things right." I smiled. "You're going to." He looked confused. So I pulled out the folder and laid it on the table. The Clause 9C violation, the email he sent the fake VC, the screenshots of his unauthorized downloads. His face drained of color as he flipped through each page. "You're buying me out?" he asked finally. "At 20 cents on the dollar." "You're joking." "Am I?" He swallowed. "You have no idea what this will do to me." "No, Gavin. You had no idea what this would do to me." Then I slid over one more sheet. It was a cease and desist letter addressed to Embersoul Holdings LLC, citing trade secret violations, unauthorized use of proprietary branding, and misappropriation of intellectual property. "And if I don't sign?" he asked. I leaned back. "Then we go to war. And when that happens, I'll make sure every food critic, supplier, and executive chef from here to Dallas knows what kind of man you are. You won't be able to sell a hot dog in this town." His jaw clenched. I gave him 24 hours. I walked away from that meeting with fire in my chest. For the first time since the betrayal, I didn't feel hollow. I felt alive. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about taking back control. And they had no idea how far I was willing to go. Gavin signed the buyout papers 18 hours later. I got the email at 2:43 a.m. Subject line, "Fine. You win." The signature was there. Digitally time-stamped. Ironclad. Just like that, his 15% stake in the Ember Table, valued at nearly $2 million, was mine for $287,000. I wired the money within the hour. He probably thought it was over. He had no idea it was just the beginning. First order of business: erase him from the brand. Every press release, photo gallery, and website page that mentioned Gavin Reed was scrubbed by dawn. Monique worked with the PR team overnight to craft a leadership restructuring narrative. No drama. No scandal. Just one clean paragraph. Effective immediately, the Ember Table will continue operations under the sole leadership of chef-founder Leroy Housel. Simple. Subtle. Devastating. Our legal team fired off the cease and desist to Ember Soul Holdings LLC. I'd done my research. Gavin had quietly registered the business name under a shell company 2 months earlier. The C&D halted everything. 2 days later, the domain was taken down. A week later, the investor contacts I'd traced to the expansion plan received notice that Gavin and Celeste had violated multiple confidentiality and ethics clauses. Every one of them ghosted. Then came the final kitchen sweep. I launched a surprise audit across all locations under the guise of seasonal compliance. But it wasn't about safety. It was about staff loyalty. Anyone I found communicating with Gavin or Celeste, anyone who had accepted side offers, responded to suspicious texts, or flirted with jumping ship, was quietly terminated with airtight documentation. The rest? They got raises, loyalty bonuses, and a private dinner with me, just me, where I told them the truth. Not gossip. Not rumors. Just facts. I made no speech. I didn't cry. I just stood at the head of that table and said, I was betrayed. But this brand wasn't built by 2 people sneaking around in hotel rooms. It was built by you. And as long as I'm still breathing, I'll never forget that. They didn't clap. They just stood up one by one and shook my hand. I knew right then they're not following the brand. They're following me. Celeste tried to retaliate. Of course she did. 2 weeks after being served, her new lawyer filed a motion to contest the prenup. They tried to argue coercion, emotional distress, outdated legal terms. It didn't matter. Janelle came to court armed with text messages, GPS data, and a full timeline cross-referencing Gavin's visits with Celeste's public charity events. They'd been meeting during time she was supposedly volunteering. The judge barely glanced at the arguments before upholding the agreement. Celeste left the courtroom pale, tight-lipped. She got the house, the Lexus, a 6-month support plan, and nothing else. No stake in the restaurants, no rights to branding, no leverage. She moved into a luxury condo in downtown Austin. I heard through mutuals she was selling jewelry on consignment. She didn't try to contact me again. But Gavin? Gavin had one more play left. 3 weeks after signing the buyout, I walked into my flagship restaurant to find a man waiting by the bar. He wore a cheap suit and a fake smile. Mr. Housel? He asked. I'm with the Texas Department of Business Oversight. We received an anonymous tip about payroll inconsistencies. A setup. Sloppy, desperate, but potentially damaging. I let him in. Showed him everything. Paid staff were clean, books were flawless, vendors all cross-verified. After 2 hours, he shook my hand and said, "You run a tight ship, sir." And then he added, "Not the first false tip we've gotten this month. Happens a lot when ex-partners get petty." I smiled. I already knew who'd made the call. But I had something better than a guess. A name. You see, I'd hired a private investigator 3 weeks earlier. Quiet guy. Ex-cybercrimes unit. He'd been tracking Gavin's emails, burner accounts, even Venmo activity. And what he found was gold. Gavin hadn't just tipped off regulators. He'd been trying to sell my recipes to a Dallas-based startup group. 2 junior chefs looking to fast-track their way into Austin's food scene. He sent them Ember Table's exact braised brisket formula, with a price tag of $15,000. He thought I'd never find out. But I did. Because one of those junior chefs was an actor my PI hired. Everything was recorded. Gavin had just walked into criminal IP theft territory. And I was ready to press charges. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I had something better in mind. That weekend, I hosted the Ember 10-year Gala, an invitation-only event at our original location, now renovated and stunning, decked in warm lights and autumn tones. It was attended by Austin's finest, food critics, donors, celebrity chefs, even a few city officials. Halfway through the night, I took the stage. I gave the usual thank you speech, then paused, and I said, "Some of you know this year brought change. Painful, personal change. But it also reminded me what this place is really about." I raised my glass. Loyalty, integrity, and fire that doesn't die just because someone tried to put it out. The room erupted. But in the back, someone had just walked in. Gavin. He wasn't invited. He wore a wrinkled jacket and eyes full of hate. But he stayed near the door, watching as I toasted to the team he tried to steal. He thought I'd be rattled. I just smiled. Because his world was about to collapse, and he didn't even know it yet. I watched Gavin standing at the back of the room like a dog that had wandered into a dinner party it wasn't invited to. Wrinkled jacket. Sweaty palms. That pitiful look of someone who used to walk into this space like he owned it, and now didn't even have the right to stand in the light. He thought he could intimidate me by showing up uninvited. But he didn't realize I was already 3 steps ahead. He didn't know I'd seen the email he sent the week before to a Houston-based investor named Carla Dorsey, pitching Ember Soul as his upcoming solo venture. He didn't know Carla had forwarded that email to me, because I'd cooked for her father's 80th birthday 2 years ago, and she respected me. He didn't know she'd replied to him with a fake meeting confirmation, just to keep him dancing while I prepared to lower the final hammer. And he definitely didn't know I had a copy of the signed agreement where he offered her Ember tables recipes and pricing models, for a $50,000 retainer. I could have pressed charges right then. Could have marched across that gala floor, had him escorted out by police, and turned him into an industry pariah with a single press release. But I didn't. Because something else happened that changed everything. The twist came from Monique. She pulled me aside midway through the event, her face unreadable. "You need to see this," she said, handing me her phone. It was a forwarded message from an anonymous staff email account. An audio file. The voice was unmistakable. Celeste. He doesn't even know Gavin was just the bait. I never loved either of them, not really. I just wanted out. And if I got a piece of the business in the process, so be it. Then laughter. Dry. Cold. Calculated. I knew he'd come unglued if he found us together. But he didn't. He got smarter. Now Gavin's losing everything and I'll walk away with just enough to start over. And the best part? He still thinks I just made a mistake. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just business. It was a setup. She wanted me to find them. She wanted me to spiral. To explode. To turn vindictive and reckless so she could flip the narrative and walk away with the sympathy, the moral high ground, the leverage. But I didn't. I played it quiet. Strategic. And that ruined her plan. Now she was burning both of us behind the scenes, playing Gavin for a fool while painting herself as the victim to investors, friends, lawyers, even Mateo. I felt a rage I hadn't felt since the night I found them together. But it didn't burn me this time. It clarified me. Celeste was the true architect of this destruction. She had weaponized loyalty, twisted love, and turned 2 men into pawns in a game I never even knew we were playing. And now, it was checkmate. The next morning I held a press conference. Not a flashy one. Just a modest gathering of local food reporters, seated inside the flagship Ember table. I stood behind the bar, clean white chef coat, hands steady. And I told the truth. I've spent the past few months rebuilding my company after a personal betrayal that nearly cost me everything. Today I'm here not for revenge but for restoration. Then I laid it out. Our former partner attempted to launch a business using stolen Ember table assets. The legal action was underway with documented evidence of trade secret theft. The company was stronger than ever, fully secure, with a loyal staff and exciting plans for expansion. Then came the final blow. I added, and to those wondering about the personal rumors, I can confirm my divorce is final. And I'm grateful. Because sometimes losing what you thought was love frees you to rediscover your power. No names. No public dragging. Just a clean, lethal truth delivered with grace. Gavin tried to retaliate with a lawsuit, claiming I'd defamed him. But my legal team buried it in discovery motions and hard evidence. Emails. Audio. Screenshots. Even his own text to investors, promising confidential recipes he never owned. The case was dropped in 2 weeks. But Celeste? She vanished. Moved to Florida, according to one source. Tried to rebrand as a restaurant consultant, under a different name. But the food world is small. Word travels fast. And when the tape Monique had leaked anonymously to a podcast host specializing in culinary scandals, it went viral. In less than 72 hours, the name Celeste Housel was trending, for all the wrong reasons. She called once. Blocked number. Voicemail only. Leroy? I don't know what you heard. But I never meant for any of this. I just wanted a life where I mattered. Click. I never called back. She mattered. She mattered to the wrong man at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. And now she was forgotten. The real twist? I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Like a man who walked out of a burning house with nothing but a knife and still built a mansion with it. 6 months later, I stood in the exact spot where it all began, the walk-in freezer of the first ember table. It was quiet, humming with cold air and compressor clicks. And just like 20 years ago, I was alone in there, surrounded by potential. Nothing cooked yet, everything waiting. This place used to represent struggle, then success, then heartbreak. But now it felt like closure. The dust had finally settled. Gavin had accepted a plea deal, no prison time, but a 6-figure restitution judgment that would follow him for the next decade. He quietly left the state, working as a consultant for mid-tier catering firms that wouldn't touch his resume if they knew the full story. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Nevada. No business, no investors, no allies. Celeste's story played out online like some soap opera no one believed anymore. After the podcast scandal, she tried launching a wellness brand. It flopped in under 2 months. A local blogger posted a now-deleted story claiming she was bartending under a fake name somewhere outside Tampa. I didn't chase it. Let the world forget her. I had. The real win wasn't their downfall. It was what I built after. The Ember Table Foundation. We launched it quietly, no press, no performative philanthropy. Just a mission, to fund young culinary talents who, like me, started with nothing but passion and a bus ticket. We opened a test kitchen in East Austin. Hired my old high school culinary teacher to run workshops. Funded 12 scholarships by the end of the first quarter. People asked why. I said, because fire, if you control it, can build more than it destroys. Mateo came home from college for spring break. First time back since the divorce. I thought he'd be distant, cold. But instead, he hugged me like a man who finally understood something about his father. I saw what she did, he said, eyes hard. And I saw how you handled it. We grilled steaks that night. Just the two of us. Nothing fancy. No sauces. Just salt, pepper, and heat. At one point, he raised his glass and said, to building better. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I'd lost my family. I felt like I'd reclaimed it. A year after the betrayal, I was invited to speak at a national restaurant conference. The topic? Resilience in business. I stood before a room of 800 chefs, investors, entrepreneurs, and media professionals. Some of them knew. Most had heard whispers. But no one had the full story. Until I told it. I told them how I built the Ember Table. How I trusted the wrong people. How I was betrayed. And how I didn't retaliate with fire, but with focus. Your greatest weapon, I said, is not revenge. It's remembering who the hell you are when someone tries to erase you. The crowd rose to their feet. And in that moment, I realized the final piece of justice had never been about destroying them. It was about redefining me. So here's what I'll leave you with. If someone steals your heart, your trust, your vision, don't let them take your story. Write it anyway. Build again. And never ever forget. Sometimes the people closest to you don't just betray you. They prepare you. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.